Always look to the sky. The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
From the powerhouse Blowtorch, Talk Radio 77 WABC, and warming up the airwaves, of course, broadcasting, of course, from the center of the universe. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting edition of the Dr. Sky Experience. You too, ladies and gentlemen, as we move the callers to the front of the line. The callers rule. The contact number here, 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. And as we mentioned before, many times, and proud to say it, we love dialogue with critical thinking, something that many of you tell us out there is missing from our world today. Tonight's adventure in a 2-hour exciting Dr. Sky Experience program. In our first hour, in just a moment, introducing to this audience a legend of film and stage, the iconic actress Stefanie Powers, ladies and gentlemen, talking about some of the projects that she's involved in, and they are very, very important, not only to you, the listeners out there, but if you're interested in the survival of many animal species in the world, if you're a dog lover, a cat lover, and to the more exotic animals, you will be enthralled by this particular program. As we like to say, welcome to the Theater of the Mind, ladies and gentlemen. And just before we introduce our very special guest, which you can get in touch with here in the short hour that we have her, 1-800-848-9222 is always the hotline number. Going back in the world of space and science, since we know mostly talk about the realms of astronomy, space, aviation, weather, and as we'll soon to be talking with a very special guest in Celebrity Guest Room. 29 years ago, the biggest UFO story ever to hit the entire United States, if not the world, was the Phoenix Lights. Hard to believe, 29 years ago. And as Friday the 13th fades away, the Ides of March just on the horizon, and beautiful spring, the vernal equinox, not too far beyond it. But in theme with the program, the 98th Academy Awards, Sunday, March the 15th at the Dolby Theater in Los Angeles, with a new category. It's called Achievement in Casting. And closer to home, our own owner and operator, John Catsimatidis, had a prominent role in the epic film Marty Supreme. So what better time to introduce a legend of film and stage as we talk about what's happening on the stage there in Hollywood on these amazing events, 98 years in strong, the Academy Awards. Let's welcome to the microphones of the Dr. Sky Experience, Stefanie Powers. Miss Powers, thank you for joining us on the Dr. Sky Experience. How are you doing?
Thank you. What a very nice introduction. My goodness, I didn't think of myself at all as iconic, but that's very nice to hear.
Well, thank you. And I want to thank publicist Harlan Ball. I've been working with Harlan, as you have, of course, for so many years, giving us and providing us with so many of the people that are in the know. I love to talk about the legends of Hollywood and, of course, going back in time, and also the current actors and actresses. Let's talk a little bit about the passion that you have, and of course the reason we have you here today primarily is to talk about the preservation of something that William Holden, which you knew extremely well, as you know. Let's talk a little bit about this whole foundation that was developed by him and continues today with you. I find it fascinating, and every animal lover right there, right, Stefanie Powers? They're going to love what they're going to hear.
Well, it actually didn't. This foundation was something I formed after Bill's death. Bill was very much, we know about his extraordinary career as an actor, but very few people knew about his because he clearly did not want it publicized. He never wanted to put himself in front of the issue of wildlife conservation. But he was a visionary. And I say that because in 1950, he created the very first game ranch for the preservation of species in the whole of East Africa. Well, probably in the whole of sub-Saharan Africa and in probably many other continents around the world, because it was in the days when very few people had the word conservation in their vocabulary, let alone the notion of extinction. And he saw it happening. He went out to East Africa in the mid-1950s, fell in love with the flora and the fauna, and bought bought the land there surrounding a hotel, which he and two friends turned into the Mount Kenya Safari Club. Yes. And that was all done very early days in people's travel. Going to places like East Africa from the United States was an enormous commitment, and a very expensive commitment, but also an enormous commitment of time. And very few people traveled that extensively in those days.
That's
so
amazing.
He was a very adventurous fellow. That's something we shared. Even though we had quite a difference in our ages, we were sort of soulmates, I think one could say. He was the great love of my life and influenced me tremendously and taught me a great deal. Most of the things he was passionate about, yes. I was interested in. And animals in particular had always been part of my life because I was raised by a stepfather who raised thoroughbred racehorses and collected some exotic animals. And so I was very well schooled in the understanding of the responsibility of taking on lives. We call them pets, but having enlarging our lives by the relationship with animals.
Oh, it's beautifully said. Beautifully said. Yes.
I have a parrot who has been in my life for 54 years. That is an amazing experience to have a creature that you can relate to for that amount of time. We always outlive our dogs and cats and more domestic animals, sadly. But to have one that you know is going to be with you for most of your life is a very unusual experience, and one that I'm thrilled to have had and to continue to have.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us, we're a privilege and honor to have a legend of film and stage, the iconic actress, as I want to call her, a friend of the show. Stephanie Powers is with us, ladies and gentlemen. You have questions for her regarding the concerns that she has. She's taken action to do this after the late and passing of William Holden. This is an amazing organization, which we're going to be talking about in detail, the William Holden Wildlife Foundation. Your questions and comments with a short hour with Ms. Powers, 1-800-848-9222. Again, not to cut you off, and I apologize, but one of the things I'm fascinated about, and you, as you mentioned, your soulmate, William Holden, what an amazing actor. I mean, you know this forefront and first, but I'm sitting here holding a Blu-ray copy of one of my favorite movies, Network, and I'm just so amazed about his role in there and all the other amazing actors and actresses of that. But he describe to it his Academy Award for Stalag 17, so many movies, The Bridge on the River Kwai. I mean, you described this man, but from what? He was described as what? The 25th most incredible actor, I guess, a legend in the world of acting. I mean,
I'm sorry, you seem to be cutting out. You seem to be cutting out, so I'm not quite sure I'm hearing everything you're saying.
I do apologize. Is that better, Ms. Powers? Can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, I apologize. What I was saying, if you didn't hear it, just so you hear the conversation, I was just saying the amazing ability of William Holden. I'm holding here in my hand a Blu-ray copy of Network, Still Mad as Hell. What an incredible movie. But, of course, talk a little bit more about his legacy. Academy Award for Stalag 17, Bridge on the River Kwai movies, Sunset Boulevard. Obviously, to describe this man so the audience can understand and fully appreciate him as you knew him.
Well, that's almost impossible to do. We don't really have that much time.
Sure.
First of all, he was a product of an industry at a time when there were some extraordinary talents that were participating in that industry. Not that we don't have extraordinary talents now, but he was very much a part of the star system, the Hollywood studio system that I experienced in its twilight stage. So there, it's very hard to try and compare what the industry is like today, or try to relate what the industry is like today with what it was in those days, and even in the days that I began as a contract player under contract to Columbia Pictures.
That's amazing. Let's talk about your background. Again, I'd like to hear that, and I'm sure the audience would. You're starting off at the age of 15. Describe this. Obviously, dancing for famed Broadway choreographer Jerome Robbins. I mean, that's an early age to get started, and rightfully so. Describe some of the early days. I mean, how did this all evolve for you? I think the audience always likes to hear how people got started in the show business career.
Well, I took ballet lessons, and then I got too tall for the ballet and began to study jazz dancing at the American School of Dance in Hollywood. The gentleman that I'd studied ballet with, because I grew up in the town in Hollywood when it was a very small town, and everybody seemed to know each other.
Yes.
So imagine that there was one ballet teacher who had been a participant and a member of the company, the Diaghilev company of the Ballet Russe de Monte Carlo, and his name was Michel Panayev. And after the Second World War, when Europe was in a mess and trying to rebuild itself, he decided to settle in California and open up a ballet school. Well, that was an ideal situation for all the young ladies whose mothers usually wanted them to study ballet for grace and charm and all of that. And it was very much a thing that everybody did in those days. And so there was this kiddies ballet class, and that evolved into a little ballet company. And among the members of that class were three young ladies, different ages, who wound up, because of the coincidence of it being such a small town, all married to Robert Wagner in one way or another. So this ballet class was Natalie Wood, Jill St. John, and me. I have a great photograph of the class. We're like stepping stones, Natalie, Jill, and myself. And we were friends throughout our lives. How amazing. But it wasn't so amazing because, as I said, the town was very small. The industry was much smaller than it is now. And the population of Los Angeles was a great deal smaller than it is now. So it wasn't unusual that people might cross each other's lives back and forth several times. Yes. And as we did. The studio system was an extraordinary idea by these movie moguls who all seemed to come from the same part of Europe, and with the imagination to create an idea of a fantasy world of cinema. And these great moguls also put an awful lot of people under contract. Not the least were youngsters like Robert Wagner was 19 years old when he was under contract to 20th Century Fox. I was 16 and turned 17 on my first movie under contract to Columbia. So we all grew up in this business. So a lot of things which would have seemed highly unusual to people outside of the town or the industry were part of life as we knew it and as we grew up in it. So it's hard to be objective about something that I lived subjectively.
No, it's amazing. Our special guest, as I'm proud to call her a friend of the show, iconic actress of film and stage, Stephanie Powers, If you, ladies and gentlemen, have questions, a rare opportunity, as we always do here on the Dr. Sky Experience, I should say from time to time, get celebrity guests here sharing their stories of their days in Hollywood and what's happening today. And Ms. Powers is involved with the William Holden Wildlife Education Center, a very interesting organization preserving animal life and animal welfare, something that I'm sure is near and dear to everybody listening out there. 1-800-848-9222. Ms. Powers, yes, go ahead.
Let me put it in its correct terminology, because we are, it's the efforts of the William Holden Wildlife Foundation were created by the fact that Bill had a vision of not only creating a game ranch for the preservation of species, but he also always wanted to build an education center so that local people in Kenya could learn about the flora and fauna of their own country and why it was so crucial and necessary for we, the human population, to preserve it, protect it, and allow it to propagate. Not just because the wonderful biodiversity of having these iconic world heritage animals on the planet to share it with, but because they do a vital thing. They produce the kind of environment that encourages biodiversity, that very biodiversity that is responsible for creating oxygen on this planet and creating this planet to be as unusual as it is in our solar system, and in fact, unique.
Oh, these are the things that we talk about here on the Dr. Sky Experience.
That's not the, sorry?
Mm-hmm. No, these are the things we talk about on the Dr. Sky Experience. My background, of course, is in the astrophysical and space world, and I couldn't agree more with you, Ms. Powers, that look what's happening to our planet. Obviously, just changes. The Earth has, of course, survived many extinctions, but not a good reason to just let it go without preserving and, maintaining the integrity of our Earth. And I think that's obviously an understatement from me.
Well, I guess the question is, do we want to be the generation who did let it go?
Absolutely.
Is that the way we want to be? Is that what we want to be remembered? Because it's human beings that created the disasters we have. So isn't it up to us to somehow try to help put it back together, put Humpty Dumpty back together?
You say it so well, Ms. Powers.
So.
You do, and let's talk a little bit about your experiences. Right, let's talk a little bit about your experiences with the United Nations. You're very active there. Describe that to this audience, because that's another powerful statement about how to maintain the sanctity and dignity of animals that cannot do things for themselves, and the things you're involved with there.
Well, I think that, the United Nations environmental, the UNEP, as well as other efforts that are under the umbrella of the United Nations, are vehicles by which we can highlight some of the work that's being done around the world in order to preserve and try to protect a semblance of biodiversity that will allow for this extraordinary planet to exist as successfully as it has in the past. It's part of the experience, I guess. I have been doing this a long time, so those of us who are in the field, many of us know each other. Jane Goodall, I had a lot of experiences with Jane and Bruta Galdicus and Diane Fossey. There are people who are doing extraordinary work. I have done extraordinary work. And
Agreed.
Everybody who's sort of in the forefront, in the trenches, as it were, we all seem to know each other. And I feel blessed and really grateful that I've had the experience and the opportunity to be among them, so that we can all say hello to each other and know of each other's work.
Yes.
It is the work which is the most important thing, and it's the work that William Holden wanted to perpetuate. And so therefore, when I created the William Holden Wildlife Foundation in his name, it was largely to the mission statement of it. It's a 501c3 public charity, so that any donations that are given to it are tax deductible. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Mission statement.
That's important, right?
The mission statement of the foundation is wildlife conservation through education and alternatives to habitat destruction.
Ms. Powers, you're lighting up the phone lines here as I would expect here. Excuse me.
Let me just finish my sentence.
Oh, please go right ahead. Sorry to cut you short. Yes, ma'am.
It's very important to save the environment and the species, but if you have no place to put them, that would be pretty disastrous.
I totally agree.
We have to combine the rescuing of the environment along with rescuing of biodiversity and wildlife conservation.
Another actress that you're probably very well aware of, a few years ago in a different format, I did an interview with the wonderful Tippi Hedren, and she also has, in the area of conservation for animals, the Shambhala organization for big cats, and I think that is also a notable experience when we talked with her.
Yes,
Tippi Hedren.
Tippi rescued. I was on her board in the very beginning. Tippi did some wonderful rescue work, and really it came from the heart and from her pocketbook. So yes. She really deserves all the points and sacrificed a great deal to rescue these extraordinary animals that she, mainly felines, that she was protecting at Shambhala.
It's a beautiful story. You know, Ms. Powers, we're going to go to the phone lines here. You're lighting it up here like a blowtorch, as I would imagine, with your experiences and your legendary career in both stage and film. Let's say good morning to James in New Jersey. Good morning, James. You're on with Stephanie Powers. How are you this morning?
Oh, thank you, Steve. I just wanted to recognize Ms. Powers because I've been a big fan of hers for many, many years. And, and I know about, William Holden Foundation and everything. And sure. I wanted to know, Ms. Powers, I believe that you were in a movie many years ago, Experiment in Terror?
Yes. Yes, that was the first film I did under contract to Columbia Pictures.
Interesting.
And was it Lee Remick?
Yes.
Okay.
Lee Remick and Glenn Ford. We can't forget him.
Yes, and that's how I got to know you. As a matter of fact, I believe in Catholic Grammar School when they had like a movie night, I think they did play that, many years after the movie was made. But I just, found that very interesting.
Oh, great. That's lovely. God, that's wonderful.
Well, James, thank you for calling in. We got a full board here, and I want to give everybody an opportunity to speak with Ms. Powers.
Nice to meet you, James.
No, thank you.
Thank you thanks for your loyalty.
Let's say good morning to Al in Yonkers. Good morning, Al. You're on with Stephanie Powers. How are you doing?
Good, Dr. Sky. Thank you so much, Stephanie Powers. I just wanted to say when I was growing up in the late 70s, early 80s, coming of age here in blue-collar Yonkers, New York, I really enjoyed watching you on Heart to Heart. I thought you were fabulous. Certain beautiful actresses I really looked up to and really thought were beautiful. One was yourself. Another was Jacqueline Smith. And I really enjoyed William Holden in the Omen series. It was a great movie, and I just wanted to say I hope you're doing well, and you really great memories when I reflect on that time in my life.
Oh, that's lovely. I'm very grateful to be a part of that, and thank you very much. It was a privilege for me as well.
Well, Ms. Powers, this is fascinating. We haven't even gotten to your side of the television world, and we'll be bringing up that as we continue here, but that's incredible. Heart to Heart. I watched it, of course, regularly, as many people, of course. This is available on DVD. We see the whole collection of the DVD set. But what's interesting is comment on Robert Wagner. Am I correct? He's 96 years young at this point in time. God bless him.
He is. We just celebrated his birthday. He was in California. He lives in Aspen, Colorado.
Oh.
And he came here to see family and to celebrate his birthday with his family here. And his girls, his daughters. And I was fortunate enough to be able to celebrate it with him.
What a dynamic duo in that series is everybody. Well, many of the young people, it's a good opportunity, right, Ms. Powers, to get them to watch the show that I know you and so many people have recognized as one of the great shows. But how about this one, ladies and gentlemen? You, the Girl from U.N.C.L.E. TV series, you're obviously Agent Avril Dancer, and that's an amazing series because, one, it's the first time that a female star commanded the lead role in a television series like that. The Girl from U.N.C.L.E. How about that? That's powerful.
Yes, it was the first female leading lady, our show, our television show. I did at the time. The interesting thing is, at the time we didn't make very much of it, and it was only until a few years ago when PBS was doing a documentary on what they called pioneers of television, and they called me and said, "You're a pioneer of television. Would you like to be in this show?" Mm-hmm. And I said, "Well, I'm hardly a pioneer." And they said, "Oh, no." And they told me this fact that the Girl from U.N.C.L.E. had in fact been set that precedent and broke the glass ceiling.
That's amazing.
Quite amazing. We didn't even know about it, or we didn't even capitalize on it. Let me put it that way.
No, that's an interesting
series. It was not
series.
made an issue of.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing, and obviously the people that were on the
issue of it now.
Well, the opposition to you guys and gals was what? Thrush. Those were the other side of the world as far as the opposite agents of that television show, and of course, the Man from U.N.C.L.E. series. That's amazing. I watched that. Ilya Kuryakin and all the other people that had those names in those particular roles in The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and you as the Girl from U.N.C.L.E. A fascinating story. Still time, ladies and...
It was also an interesting period of time that the studio system was divesting itself of a lot of its holdings due to the Securities Exchange Commission in the 50s, late 40s, early 50s, had deemed that the studio system was a monopoly because they made the product, they distributed the product, and they exhibited the product, sort of like Netflix. But they're not called, they're not being accused of being a monopoly. In any event, the studio system was broken up by virtue of that accusation or that fact. And so they had to let go parts of their business, and part of their business was also that they had an awful lot of people under contract for a certain amount commitment in films and in years. So for the young ones, there was a sort of standardized player's contract of 7 years where they paid us nothing, but we were under contract for 7 years. It was a wonderful experience because it was a kind of finishing school, certainly for all of us young ones.
Beautiful story.
I know that there are many young actors today that would long to have been able to have that privilege of the exposure that availed to us all at the time. So at the time we did The Girl from U.N.C.L.E., it was around the period where they were divesting themselves of contracts with leading players, character actors, all the people that they had commitments with. So
more with Stephanie Powers, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry to cut you short, ma'am. We are at the hard break at the bottom of the hour. If you're just joining us, legendary actress Stephanie Powers. She's kind enough to take time out of her busy schedule. And you, ladies and gentlemen, can get in on the conversation if we haven't gotten to Dave in Arizona, Frank in Maine, and you at 1-800-848-9222. She's with us for the next half hour to the top of hour number one, and we do appreciate her time on stage and film an iconic individual, as I mentioned before, actress Stephanie Powers. We will be right back, ladies and gentlemen.
The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Hello, everybody. You're listening to me, Ruta Lee, on the Dr. Sky Experience on Talk Radio WABC.
31 minutes after the hour, it's a privilege and honor as we move into celebrity guests on the Dr. Sky Experience in what we call Theater of the Mind. Our special guest, an icon of stage and film, Stephanie Powers. She's joining us. Let's continue, Miss Powers, with the callers. Let's say good morning to Dave in Arizona. Good morning, Dave. Thanks for being with us. Say hi to Stephanie Powers.
What an honor and a privilege. You know, Bill Holden made a movie right down the road from me in old Tucson. It was Arizona. It was the first movie they made out here. And it was, what is it?
Well, they built that place. They built that set. They built a set for the set that an awful lot of films filmed on, including a movie that I did with John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara called McClintock. We filmed at Old Tucson. But Old Tucson was built for that movie, Arizona, which Bill starred in with.
You know, Bob Shelton was, you probably met Bob Shelton.
I knew Bob Shelton, yes.
And he ran Old Tucson. You ought to come out here and visit Old Tucson. Angie Dickinson came out here because she made Rio Bravo. And
yes, she did.
Dan Shear, he's an editor at Green Valley, and he interviewed her. What a class lady. But, you know, Miss Powers, my mom, she loved you and Heart to Heart. And, you know, but God bless
you. Bet, yeah. And
I had a chance to adopt a couple wild Mustangs, one from Yuma and one from Nevada. And these horses they're the best on the earth, I tell you.
Well, Dave, thanks for calling in from my home state in Arizona. I appreciate you.
So glad she adopted those horses.
It's an amazing story. Thanks, Dave in Arizona. Let's say good morning to Frank in Maine. You've been patient, Frank. Good morning. Say hello to actress Stephanie Powers. How you doing?
Good morning, Dr. Sky, and what a privilege to speak to Miss Powers. I went to see you, Miss Powers, in a movie called Escape to Athena. And yes, and Telly Savalas and Roger Moore. It was really quite a movie. My sincere thanks for what you're doing with the William Holden Foundation up here in Maine. They're actually turning garbage dumps that used to be gas-filled methane into parks, and I think we are turning the tables on the industries that are trying to destroy the environment and turning it into land that's actually usable. So I really appreciate what you're doing, and animals are starting, and birds are starting to come back. So it's really appreciative what you're doing. I think it's a worthwhile foundation.
Well, thank you very much. None of our work is possible without our wonderful donors. They make it all happen, and if it weren't for them, we wouldn't be able to do any of the work we're doing. So I'm eternally grateful for all the support that we've received since we opened our doors in 1982. We receive, on an average, at our education center, 14 to 16,000 people a year.
That's a lot.
So it's a very busy place where it's not just a small education center.
That's great. Frank in Maine, thank you for chiming in here. We're speaking, of course, with legendary actress Stephanie Powers, a short and important experience for us here on the Dr. Sky Experience. 1-800-848-9222, ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to get in and chime in on the conversation. A woman who has so many experiences here that obviously I'm sure she's got books and many books to come. But I want to make sure I have this right, Ms. Powers. The website for the organization, WHWF.org. I hope I am saying that correctly to this audience.
Yes, WHWF.org. It's the acronym for the William Holden Wildlife Foundation.
Yeah, this is fascinating because when I watched you on television for years and continue to see this, I mean, again, talking about Heart to Heart, just a few more comments about that. I mean, describe how you two came together in this part. I mean, this is interesting. Many people may be wondering, how did they select both of you for this particular series? Because there's always good backstories from people like yourself in Hollywood. Let's hear that.
Well, Robert Wagner actually had ownership. He had, and Natalie Wood had a deal with Spelling and Goldberg to develop a television series, and this was the one the project that he liked and she liked, but it wasn't for them to act in necessarily. But he decided to do that, and as it was really the tenor of the piece was very much like the old. Movies, the series of movies called The Thin Man, and he loved those as a young man, and we all knew each other. So I knew the Spelling and Goldberg. I knew Tom Mankiewicz, who was rewriting this project, and I was in the middle of doing a production of Cyrano de Bergerac with Stacy Keach that we were opening out of town in San Francisco, and with an intention to go to New York. And I got a phone call from all of them, Aaron Spelling and Robert Wagner and Tom Mankiewicz, talking about the pilot that they wanted to do and would I be interested in doing it. But then, of course, I was committed to go to Broadway. And Aaron Spelling said, well, you know, there's a rumor that there's going to be a newspaper strike in New York. And as you must know, anytime there's a newspaper strike, no shows that are out of town ever come into town because there's no way to publicize them. So all I can say was I was thrilled that newspaper strike happened because I was then able to do the pilot of Heart to Heart.
Amazing. Our special guest, Stephanie Powers, 1-800-848-9222, as we continue here on the Dr. Sky Experience. As I mentioned in the opening portion of the show, Ms. Powers, of course, the 98th Academy Awards this Sunday. Very interesting nominations are coming up there. And what I wanted to ask you, this is interesting. I've always wanted to ask somebody, and you're the person to ask, the differences between Hollywood then and now. And if you don't mind commenting on some of that, because there's mixed opinions from everybody.
That could fill an entire book.
Give us the short version then, if you could.
And there are lots of books that have been written about the differences. Yes. Far better than I can express it in the limited amount of time I have.
No, I understand. Well, that's interesting because it's a very powerhouse type of an environment there. And let's just hope that so many of these different films, I mean, I don't know them all, and obviously the listeners out there may have their particular favorites, but what's most impressive is about the organization that you, of course, are steering. And it's about animal welfare, and I think that's so amazing because, you know, we're the owners of a beautiful little Bichon, Maltese Bichon. You know, she's like a family member, of course. You know, her name is Aurora, and I'm sure my partner would love me mentioning that. But look at all the poor little animals out there that do not have the hope that you're giving to certain animals. I mean, that's incredible. I mean, not to force people that they have to have an animal to take it in from being, you know, euthanized. But it's amazing, Ms. Powers, what you're doing, and maybe some commentary. I mean, how can other people get involved with not only this organization, but any suggestions for people that may want to do adoptions
we have,
of animals?
As we just said, as we just mentioned, we have a website which clearly explains everything we're doing, which is quite extensive. And if anybody is moved after they read some of the activities that we're involved with, there is a way to participate, and no donation is too small. And even if you don't have a donation, if you are inspired to do something, I think each and every one of us, at this stage in our understanding of the responsibilities that human beings have for having destroyed this planet up till this point, and those people who feel moved to participate in trying to restore it, there's an awful lot that everybody can do, and that doesn't cost anything. Most of that is to look at ourselves with a mirror and really examine our own behavior and how much we destroy by using and abusing too many products that are not biodegradable.
Sure. And also, Ms. Powers, you know, as many people out there, this is particularly the month, Women's History Month. And also Earth Day is coming up here, as we talk about in April.
That's the most important one, yeah. It's very important that we celebrate Earth Day, and that Earth Day reminds us of our responsibility to our planet, to the environment, and to each other.
You know, Ms. Powers, I study astronomy and the space sciences, and after this we have a guest who I go to as our go-to guy. He talks as an author about many space environments, what NASA's doing, but with you and I just talking about this, about the controlling this environment and keeping it safe for future generations and people like ourselves right now, we have a problem here. The sun, we do not really understand its true solar cycle. What I'm mentioning here is over the course of millions and millions of years, we've had all these different extinctions. Earth seems to be able to cleanse itself. But don't you think, the understatement of the show, it surely needs everybody's help, correct?
It certainly needs evidence. I had the great distinction of I was married to an actor called Gary Lockwood, who was played one of the astronauts in 2001: A Space Odyssey, and I spent a lot of time on that set in England and got to know Arthur C. Clarke very well. Along with Arthur, there were many scientists that came on that set because the innovations that Stanley was making were not in practice. They were on paper. They were people thinking about being able to do some of the things that Stanley enacted in that film, but no one was actually doing it.
Yeah, exactly right.
Buckminster Fuller also was around and about, and I had a chance to get to know him and spend a New Year's Eve with him.
Wow, that's amazing.
And one of my dearest friends leads the Mars mission at JPL. So I stay very close to, as close as I can to events that are going on in our solar system.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, Ms. Powers, because I did have an interview with Gary Lockwood about 5 or 6 years ago, and he was talking, of course, about his role there with Keir. I mean, that's amazing. I met both of them at a science fiction convention one time, and I was just amazed.
Keir, yes.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Keir, and I believe he still is alive. We've tried to get him as a guest, but I don't think he's doing much in the world of doing interviews. But the point I want to make to this...
Gary's still alive as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Alive.
No, he was an awesome guest. And I certainly look forward to talking about those particular shows here on the Dr. Sky Experience. But the legendary Kubrick, I mean, talk about that. If I heard you correctly, did you say you actually met Stanley and actually talked with him? I mean, to me, tell us about that.
I spent a lot of time with him and a lot of time with his family, and I see his family regularly. I go out to their beautiful estate where Stanley is buried. And, everybody who goes to the estate, everybody who knew Stanley, who goes to visit that house, has to bring a stone, a rock, because in the Jewish tradition, you place a rock on the grave of the person that you're visiting, the grave of the person you cared for. And Stanley was an extraordinary man. I feel blessed that I had the ability to know him, or the opportunity to know him, and that our friendship continued long after 2001 was finished and released, because I was always working in England. I spent a lot of time working in England and living in England, which I still do.
And we're up against that break again, Miss Powers, as you know, as a pro in the broadcast world. We'll be right back with legendary actress Stephanie Powers. Still time, ladies and gentlemen, 1-800-848-9222 as she takes us to the top of hour number 2.
The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Hi, this is Carol Channing. Yes, I'm an actress, musical and all that. Well, I'm so proud to be on the Dr. Sky show, and always remember to keep your eyes to the skies.
46 minutes after the hour, we go right to our very special guest and thank her for her time reminiscing about Hollywood and also about this amazing organization, the foundation behind William Holden, the organization, the William Holden Wildlife Center. And you can learn so much more about that organization by simply going to the website whwf.org. Let's continue with the callers right now. Let's say good morning to Eduardo. He's in Tampa, Florida. Eduardo, you're on with legendary actress Stephanie Powers. How are you doing?
Yes, Stephanie, this is an honor, and Dr. Sky. And we also have to, I'm a Heart-to-Heart fan too, but we also have to mention the Love Boat. And I like how everybody, when they get introduced, smiles, which nowadays that doesn't happen. But everybody smiles. Even the villains on the Love Boat smiled. That was pretty funny.
Yes, Ms. Powers.
Okay. Wow. I don't know what you're referring to. I didn't do the Love Boat. So,
you didn't? I thought you did.
I never did the Love Boat. No.
Oh, Eduardo, we have the wrong connection then on that one, huh? There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Eduardo, do you have another question or comment? We're going to move forward, but we appreciate your interest.
When people travel, what is your suggestion, like as far as the conservation and all that, when people visit like the safaris and all that, what are your suggestions with people like go in there and do like a week or a month of, spending time with the animals and all that? What is your suggestion on people doing that? Because I always check out a museum when I go and travel.
All right. If you're interested in visiting and going on safari means trip. So if you're going traveling to either East Africa, South Africa, I think it's very important you do your homework so that you know what your expectation is. Are you interested in seeing a particular species? Are you interested in looking and understanding the dynamics of the tribal life in various places in Africa? It's up to the individual. There's a lot to learn, there's a lot to know, and there's a lot to appreciate. It's just up to what you're interested in. And if it's a particular species, there are better places to see it at certain times of the year. And but it's all, you have to sort of study a bit. And when you do, and you distill exactly what it is you want to see and where you want to go, it'll make your trip so much more enjoyable.
Thank you, Eduardo in Tampa. I appreciate your questions and comments on the Dr. Sky Experience. Well, Ms. Powers, we continue here welcoming Jim in upstate New York. Good morning, Jim. Thanks for your patience, and you're on the air.
Hey, good morning, Dr. Sky, and it's an honor to talk to you, Ms. Powers. Again, I was a big fan of Heart to Heart back in the day, and it's
thank you.
A pleasure to speak to you. You know, between you and William Holden, you lived through the golden years of Hollywood. You know, you didn't have the internet. Today, there's so many distractions. Back then, the whole country, idolized the stars. And it was a different class. And just a whole different demeanor in the country. And Hollywood was just a whole different thing than it is today.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
And the animal conservation, I'm very much behind that also. We bought a small farm here upstate New York. We're not farmers, but we rescue animals.
Amen. Yeah, that's nice.
Well, great for you. That's fabulous. What have you got?
Dogs. We have rescue dogs, cats, tortoises, rabbits, you name it. If we ever, we were going to get into bigger animals because I do have a big livestock building, but we have to get that a little more prepared for that. But
thank you very much on behalf of everyone who cares about animals. You're doing a wonderful job. You're doing God's work,
Jim.
And thank you,
Jim. That's amazing. That's a beautiful thing because I'm sure he has, like yourself, a spot in heaven, and those that can, want to help protect these animals from the harm that can happen. It's so sad, Ms. Powers. You hear about little kittens, and unless there's a way to control the birth or how they do that, with the birth control methods for animals like that.
Well, that's once again human responsibility.
You said it best.
That's our responsibility as people protecting and in including the life of a pet or an animal in our lives, we have to be responsible for their future as well. And if you just allow them to breed with no visible means of support, they're going to have a very unhappy ending.
You're absolutely right. And also to mention before the clock runs out here, your creation, the Jaguar Conservation Trust, that's also something else I'd like you to comment on. That's an amazing species of animal, and talk about the affinity you have for that and that organization. That's powerful.
Well, that was a wonderful opportunity. Jaguar North America gave me the opportunity for 5 years to be their conservation representative for the preservation of jaguar, the cat's jaguar. And what we were doing was trying to promote the idea that the automobile had as much integrity as an automobile as they did with their conservation work to preserve and protect the animal it used as their logo and symbol. And I created that name, the Jaguar Conservation Trust, and operated it in Belize, Guatemala, and Costa Rica for 5 years.
Wow, that's an amazing story. That's a country I'd love to visit sometime, and I'm sure many people out there have. Belize must be a beautiful place. It's not that far from the continental United States, so that's an amazing place,
no,
I'm sure.
Isn't.
It isn't?
No, it's not very far. No,
I'm sorry. I thought you said it's not a good place.
And they speak English, so yes. People don't have a language barrier.
Well, let's wrap this up. Again, I'm honored, and I want to thank publicist Harlan Ball. We've been working with Harlan for so many years, as you know him. He's a legend himself, and it's such a shame. I understand that he lost. I'm not going to go into too much personal details, but during the Great Fire throughout the Los Angeles area, I think he was one of the ones who lost his home, and that's a tragic thing. I mean, unless people realize just how far and extent that fire was, so many people.
He was in Altadena.
Oh, he was?
His home was in Altadena, and the home, which was absolutely beautiful, was almost 100 years old.
Oh, wow.
Which he preserved with loving care, and it was among some of the great tragedies of that area.
That's amazing, yes. God bless everyone. And I imagine they're slowly rebuilding out there, and to this day.
Not much, no, not enough.
I didn't know that. No,
not
really,
enough,
so it's a slow process.
It's not going fast enough, and all of the promises for the building permits, etc., to come through just hasn't materialized.
Oh, how sad! And hopefully, things will improve for the people there with the great loss. One more time, ladies and gentlemen, you can get in touch with the legendary and iconic actress's foundation, obviously the William Holden Wildlife Foundation. Contributions and your interest at WHWF.org. We appreciate your time here on this particular radio show. And wow, do you have any book or anything coming out new? Any other information you'd like to pass on to this incredible audience that is one of the most powerful in the nation?
There is something that is being released through the auspices of the United Nations. It's, as you had announced, it's an online book that highlights the work of 27 people from around the world, and I'm one of them, who are changing for the best, for doing it's change for the good, and it's all to do with a passion of theirs. Mine is, of course, the environment, and agents of change is what it's called, and so I'm very proud to be a part of that.
Ms. Powers, I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I'm sure the many listeners, as you've heard, they're, of course, reminiscing with you about your time, of course, which is an amazing story here, ladies and gentlemen, every once in a while, and that once in a while happened right now. We're fortunate to talk to a celebrity guest, and she, Stephanie Powers. One more time, ladies and gentlemen, if you're looking to learn more about this organization, the William Holden Wildlife Foundation, simply go to WHWF.org. Ms. Powers, it's an honor, and thank you so much for spending time with us on this Friday evening on the West Coast.
Well, thank you, Professor, and maybe one day our paths will cross at JPL.
I would love to meet you and shake your hand, and also the many fine folks that are working on these amazing space projects, which, by the way, Miss Powers, is the subject of the next hour number 2 of the Dr. Sky Experience. Blessings to you, and of course, we'll look forward to talking to you soon. You have a good morning. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. Well, folks, as we move to the top of hour number 1 and move to hour number 2, we're going to be changing subjects. As you heard Miss Powers mention, JPL and her affiliation, knowing many of the people who work on the projects there for the Mars missions and so many other deep space probes. But now is the time that we give you a quick update on the wonders of the heavens. But equally important, our number 2 guest is Rod Pyle. He's an author, a journalist, television producer, and editor-in-chief of Ad Astra magazine. He's written many books on space history, exploration, and development, including Space 2.0, Innovation, the NASA Way, Blueprint for a Battle Star, Amazing Stories of the Space Age, and his love and interest, like mine, and I'm sure many of you, the original 12 astronauts that went to the surface of the moon, a book entitled First on the Moon. But what about what's visible in the heavens before we go to the top of the hour? We find ourselves looking to a beautiful sky and the premonition, ladies and gentlemen, of finding us moving toward that time, the Ides of March, which, of course, in 44 BC, the sad assassination of Julius Caesar, we talk about the Ides of March. May the winds not blow hard, and may the vernal equinox, which begins next Saturday on the 20th, bring you brighter, warmer weather and the promise of things that grow, the season we call spring. We found out that the moon is new on the 19th, which means it's one of the best times of the entire year, or if not the month, to look at deep sky objects. So here's a quick analysis of what you can see if you're looking in skies right now, listening to the Dr. Sky Experience. High overhead at sunset now is the mighty planet Jupiter, some 440 million miles away. If you could jump on a light beam, ladies and gentlemen, it would take you about 40 minutes, traveling at 670 million miles an hour. The winter constellations are still high in the southern sky, no matter where you're listening to this particular program. The brilliant star Sirius, the most brilliant star in the heavens other than the sun, shines brightly as a beacon. This star was a great star that the Egyptians used for the layout of many of the pyramids. They called that the god Saptet. It was a star that they looked at in the early morning hours in August of every year, called the heliacal rising of Sirius. That, the brilliant star, rose just before the sun. It was the indication to the Egyptians, for that was the time that their plantation season began. The harvesting of crops later on, but that was the time to plant seeds. To learn so much more about all these things that we speak about, a new and brand new update on the Dr. Sky Experience podcast as we move into the deeper part of March 2026. Stay tuned for our special guest in hour number 2, author, journalist, and TV producer, Rod Pyle.
Raise the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an Enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. Start converting your B2B audience today. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started today at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
This is your fix.
I am your host, Stassi Schroeder. Welcome to Tell Me Lies, the official podcast. What's the most unhinged thing of season 3?
Steven, because he's so evil.
I do think he is misunderstood.
You see everyone face consequences. It's intoxicating.
The writers just know how to trick you.
There's always a twist in this show.
Tell Me Lies, the official podcast, January 6th, and stream the new season of Tell Me Lies, January 13th on Hulu and Hulu on Disney+.
Always look to the sky. The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Hour number 2 with the Dr. Sky Experience, of course, permeates the airwaves, as we like to say, broadcasting from the powerhouse blowtorch, from the center of the universe, New York City, to you, the nation, the world, and what? We're even sure out to the cosmos. The contact number is always 1-800-848-9222. Use it often because, ladies and gentlemen, the callers rule on this particular radio show. And while we're at it, you can listen, as you probably know by now, to many of the previous editions of not only the Dr. Sky Experience, but how about all the other great hosts that are filling airtime here on Talk Radio 77 WABC at WABCRadio.com as we continue to move through time and space. No stranger to the microphone, Rod Pyle is an author, a journalist, television producer, and as I mentioned before, at the end of Hour 1, editor-in-chief of Ad Astra magazine. He's written many books on space history, exploration, and the beat goes on. Welcome to Rod Pyle, a good friend of the radio show, and thanks for being with us this evening and morning.
My pleasure, Dr. Sky, and I just want to say you are a gentleman of the airwaves in the classic mold, and I really respect that.
Wow, and I did not have to pay him a penny for that, right?
Not a bit. All I have to do is listen.
Thank you very much. You're a kind gentleman. And again, I always say this, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart. It's not so much about the host. It's about the great guests. So count yourself as one of those that we've had. And by the way, it'll celebrate 1 year of the Dr. Sky Experience. I believe it's next weekend. So again, many thanks to owner and operator John Katsimatidis, and from the executive staff, Chad Lopez, for giving me the opportunity to sit behind this particular microphone. Boy, do we have some great ideas coming up, and we'll be sharing those with the audience as time permits. Rod, there's so much stuff going on in space right now, and I really feel it's so important. Let's start off with what I think, and this is just my opinion, one of the most interesting subjects to everybody listening out there. What the heck is the latest on what's going on with NASA, the Artemis moon missions, and some of the changes that we've had? And by the way, as you know, our new director of NASA, Mr. Isaacman, let's talk about what's going on with Artemis right now. Give us the latest.
So just to touch on the middle part of that question, there was a huge swath of cuts through NASA, about 4,000 people, which is a significant percentage of their workforce due to DOGE. And those were mostly seasoned, experienced people and the kind of brain trust you can't just casually reassemble. And they're stuck with it because those people either took early retirement or were furloughed permanently. So one of the things Jared Isaacman did pretty early after he came in, he really hit the ground running. I've only met the guy a couple of times, so I can't say I know him, but he does seem to be a person of real integrity. So he reformed the way NASA can do hiring and is out scrambling to try and get people, either get them back or get new, perhaps younger people that can fill these positions, because at this point they're running pretty thin. Now, there weren't a lot of people released from the Artemis side because the administration wanted to keep that going, but from a lot of other places, including JPL, where I used to work until all this started as a contractor, they're really struggling, so it can't happen too soon. But in terms of Artemis news, we just had a press conference yesterday at the Kennedy Space Center, and it was interesting. It was basically, okay, catch us up on what's happening with Artemis. And they're making good progress. They had, as you know, they had to roll the rocket back to the VAB because they were having problems charging the helium in the top stage. And it turned out that there was some kind of a design in the check valve that was blocking the helium transfer. So they worked with that, were able to reproduce the fault, and they think they've got that solved. Prior to that, they were having hydrogen leaks, which is down where they're tanking the big first stage. As you know, because you're a scientist, hydrogen's a very small, slippery critter, and it's really hard to get a good seal. So you've got, this quick disconnect hose.
And it ignites very well, Rod. You're right. It ignites very well.
Yes, we don't like.
Do Hindenburg experience without sounding funny here. You bet. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so this quick disconnect hose has to mate up with the bottom of the booster, and that rides out all the way on the crawler, the couple of miles out to the launch pad from the VAB. And, there's a little bit of bouncing and vibration. The crawler's very big and heavy, but it still gets jostled a bit. They think that's what may have caused the problem. So they seem to have ironed both these out. They're going to roll it back in about a week, and they think that they're going to be good for a launch sometime between April 1st and April 6th. Now, I have to add, there's a very interesting occurrence during this press conference. John Honeycutt, who's one of the senior guys in the Artemis program, was asked, hey, you guys, have been giving out percentages, odds of success and failure. What do you feel they are now? And he said, well, for some things we say 1 in 50 chance of failure. We like to get around 1 to 30. And in this case, I got to say probably 1 in 2. And the room was stunned. And the woman next to him, who is the tops in this program, kind of looked over with sort of this funny look. And I think what the press heard was there's a 50-50 chance that the astronauts will die. And that is not what he meant. What he meant is there's a 50-50 chance everything will work perfectly. But, he muttered afterwards, he said, oh boy, I can just imagine the headlines we're going to see tomorrow. And then
that's a horrible way. Right, as the media can run to their computers or get on their phones and type in a text. So misinformation. That's not good.
They spent a fair amount of time walking that back and re-explaining it. And then finally they said, look, we can't give you that kind of a number. We just can't. But they do seem to be in good shape. So as I think you alluded to when we were talking earlier, there's also been this big reshuffle of programs. So Artemis 2 was originally intended to be a lunar flyby, not orbit like Apollo 8, just to fly by, come back home. And that's still on. But Artemis 3, which was supposed to be a landing in a couple of years, year or two, it's always a little flexible, is now going to be an Earth orbital mission trying to testing docking with whichever of the lunar landers is ready by then, either SpaceX's or Blue Origin's, probably Blue Origin's if I was to put money on it.
Yes.
And then Artemis 4 will do the landing, we hope, in 2028. That's a big shift in mission priorities. They also canceled the advanced upper stage of the rocket, which is supposed to give it more power. They've changed the orbital configuration, so they feel they've got a better shot of getting down there with the power that they have on that rocket. And kind of critically, they canceled the Lunar Gateway Station, which was going to be the dock.
Yeah, I was excited about that, Rod. I wanted to hear about that, but that's sad because if you have astronaut difficulties, like, God forbid, a replication of Apollo 13, then obviously this Lunar Gateway could have been, a temporary housing location, a space station in orbit. So you can't do everything. So one more time, I got to hear this from you for the audience. And ladies and gentlemen, you have questions on these subjects. We go to our go-to guy, Rod Pyle, 1-800-848-9222. So much to talk about. But describe to us, if you would, this whole Lunar Gateway project. How much money does NASA really get every year if we look at all the other three-letter agencies? And what kind of amount of money does NASA really get compared to some other places like SpaceX that do their own thing?
So at the height of Apollo, which is 1965-66, NASA was getting about 5% of the federal budget, a little bit less. That's the whole federal budget, not discretionary, but everything. So it was a lot in those dollars. Now they're getting a tenth of that. Now, back in the 1960s, we were working on Gemini and Apollo, continuously building toward this lunar capability. We flew a couple of Mars probes, and we hurled a couple of things out to Venus, and that's it. That was what we were doing in the solar system. Now, as you well know, we've got NASA running countless satellites around Earth. They've got the Mars rovers, they've got the Mars orbiters, they've got lunar orbiters. They've got stuff out in the deep solar system. Juno is still running out around Jupiter. They're tracking the Voyagers. So they're doing a whole lot more with a tenth of the money. So it's really been kind of one of the things that's been holding Artemis back is this continuous underfunding. And even if they get the money they're supposed to get, it comes late. There are these continuing resolutions because, nobody in the government can agree on how much to send over there. The administration argues with the House and back and forth and so on. So it really keeps this in confusion. So to the point of Gateway, this thing's been up, down, on, off many times for well over a decade. It was at one point going to be not around the moon, but somewhere else. Then, okay, we'll put it out by the moon. It would never have been inhabited for more than a month at a time and possibly only a couple times a year. But they built a lot of it. And now we're canceling it. And that's something we do a lot in this country, which the Chinese.
Yeah, I hear you, Rod. But I throw this question to the audience out there to get them involved in the conversation, as I'm sure they will be. What projects, ladies and gentlemen, would you see if you had the budget of NASA to really be focusing on? Some say let's not go to the moon. And again, if we go back to Elon Musk and his theory, not a literal quote, right, Rod? He's not necessarily looking to do so much expansive lunar colonization, but he just changed his mind. It was to go to Mars, but now what I'm saying, hopefully I'm correct, is that they want to spend more time doing the lunar cycle to do habitation. And that's an interesting thing, but I wonder what the audience thinks if that money was to be spent. 1-800-848-9222. That gets you on the air with myself and Rod Pyle. Interesting stuff, isn't it, Rod?
It's a never-ending, ever-changing kaleidoscope of situations, and it feels like it's really sped up in this last decade and a half with this lunar push. There's been consistency from administration to administration. The Artemis was started by Trump in 2016, transitioned to the Biden administration, survived into Trump too, which doesn't always happen because a lot of times you change parties, things get canceled. But it has been a bumpy road for sure.
Help us out on something else here. Again, you're the expert on this subject. When you talk about Boeing Starliner, we heard thrusters, helium leaks. We're hearing helium leaks. Where in specificity are these leaks now in the Artemis? Is it in the Orion capsule, which is the crew habitation module, or is it something totally different in your mind? What is it? Just tell us.
The leaks have been between the hydrogen fuel supply on the ground and the booster. So they have to keep pumping hydrogen into it as a cryogenic, right, super cold as a fluid, and it keeps boiling off while the rocket's waiting there to launch. So you've got to keep it pressurized and keep the tank full so it can make it to orbit and beyond. So it's on that first stage. And as I was saying earlier, when you're trundling this thing, the booster back and forth from the VAB to the pad, back to the VAB, back to the pad, those seals bang around a bit and it can be a problem. And, these spacecraft are kept powered up for weeks or months at a time as they're preparing to go. You don't want to turn it off and then turn it back on because that's what blows circuits. So there's all kinds of things that can happen. So just having a hydrogen leak and the helium pressurization problem isn't bad for a new rocket. This thing's only flown once, but I would not be surprised if it happened again. We used to sit in the press room waiting for shuttle launches for a week at a time. And sometimes, they didn't go and you had to come back a month later. So
right, that cost me a lot of money on the last shuttle mission. I was there. We sat in that, news area, and we actually were there for 4 days. And my time, my budget, my time, I said, oh, God, I'm going to be there for a couple of days. Well, it turned out to be almost 2 weeks, right, because of a launch delay. So we were out of pocket on those things. That was kind of an interesting experience.
I was too.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm no better, my friend. But the interesting part about this is, let's talk about a vacation. If folks haven't been to the Kennedy Space Center, and again, we don't get paid to tell them this is interesting because when we were there many, many times, it becomes old story for me. If you take a look at that giant crawler, this giant mechanized like a bulldozer thing, like a tank, to support all that weight, we were standing literally as a film crew inches or feet away from those big, treads on the drive thing there. That's amazing. Right. If people haven't seen it, you need to get yourself down there because the biggest part, and again, I'm not doing the tourism thing here on the show, but maybe we are a little bit. Why not? You get to see a fully laid down on its side or, horizontal, a Saturn V moon rocket. Isn't that the most incredible thing when you stand there and see that massive machine? That's almost ungodly if you look at it as a piece of technology.
It's the most expensive aerospace exhibit in museum history. And they got another one in Houston. And you're right. I mean, you see that thing. I used to do some executive training at Johnson Space Center. And I'd always start with they've got a little rocket garden with the old V2 engine and a couple of small things outside. Right. And then I'd walk this group of 12 case-hardened executives, from Yahoo and the Federal Reserve and all this. These are big C-suite guys. I'd walk them down the side of the building, and I'd stop at the door into the Saturn V building, into this big metal shed, and I'd say, that thing you just saw was 1961. This is 1968. And I'd open that door, and they'd walk in, and I kid you not, half of them started crying because it's just such an amazing sight. These incredible machines.
Well, you see those big F1 engines lying, and the thing is that first stage. And I mean, that's incredible. And the story goes, corroborate this, I think I read it somewhere, that Jeff Bezos actually dug up some of those expent F1 engines out of the ocean to kind of reverse engineer or improve on what the technology was then. That's an amazing rocket when you see it on its side. You just can't believe humans built it.
And he got, I think, 2 out of the Atlantic, and they were pretty banged up. I mean, there's a few of them around. They've got, of course, the ones on the rockets and the 2 centers we were talking about. There's one sitting out. I think it's still there in front of what used to be Rocketdyne in Canoga Park, California. Mm-hmm. There's F1 engines around. There's still blueprints. There was that story a couple of years ago about, they had to go take it apart to measure things because they didn't know. There's some of that, but mainly it was just to see how it was made. Bezos was more interested in just having them as artifacts.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's not doing it that way. He's building engines about a third that thrust and just using more of them on a smaller rocket. And then, of course, Elon Musk is building much smaller ones, but still with thrust about the third of what the F-1 put out. And he builds these things in a couple of days. And in a world where traditional aerospace companies still charge $150 million to build a single rocket engine, he turns them out for, I think, $1 million each or $1.5 million. I mean, it's just incredible what that company's done.
Right, and like putting donuts,
crazy,
on the assembly line. I mean, look at how many rockets they're building. But folks, if you have questions and comments, we go to our space guy, as we often can, and certainly should more often, as people tell us. My email is just drsky@wabcradio.com. Questions and comments I always answer. 1-800-848-9222, as we call this the theater of the mind, right? Rod, as we go and move through time and space here, talking about subjects from astronomy, space, aviation, weather. Our previous hour, honored to have the legendary actress Stephanie Powers, and stories of American exceptionalism. I don't think I left anything out, right, Rod? There's so many things to talk about and such limited time. Here, let's do one here. Let's see if we can do this before the bottom of the hour, because it's a deep one. There was a recent satellite that was talked about all across the internet. And I always go, wow, I read it and I say, wait a minute, how accurate is this? It was the Van Allen-built A satellite, up there since 2012, and the big news alert comes, the spacecraft is going to crash and come out of orbit. It's tiny, 1,300 pounds. We followed it on the satellite tracker, which is like a 3D globe. People can do that, various websites. But do we know now that it deorbited? I couldn't get any qualified information on this. Tell us what you might know.
So it came down yesterday just west of the Galapagos, which is good because it's out in the Pacific. It's a little closer to Ecuador than we'd like. So that might have made people nervous. And, the prediction was that a significant fraction of that could survive, the hardest, densest part of the machine. Now, there's still a Van Allen B up there. So there was an A and B. Both these things ran out of fuel in 2019. When they were launched in 2012, the mandates weren't there that are in place now, saying, okay, look, you have to know how to bring this thing home or boost it out into what they call a graveyard orbit way up high. So they don't just come down and bop somebody on the head like we were afraid of with Skylab back in the late 70s. So now the newer machines, including everything that Elon Musk puts up there, have to reserve enough fuel and maneuvering capability to do a forced reentry or to leave low Earth orbit. Unfortunately, these two don't do that. We don't know when Van Allen B is going to reenter.
Sure.
But there were no reports of injuries or anything because it came down the water. And, you look at the planet, there's a lot of ocean. So the chances are good it's going to come down the ocean, which is why most of the meteorites end up there. But still, it makes people kind of nervous.
Well, that's what I want to talk about, Rod, because, in my humble opinion, and, people don't have to like it or they can join in and talk about it. But here's the opinion. In many cases, I read so many of these asteroid stories that are coming close to the Earth, and we hear about the headline without reading it verbatim, is a spacecraft is coming out of the atmosphere and it could survive, or some of it could survive reentry. Do you really believe, without putting you in the hot seat or the warm seat, is a lot of this just hype? I mean, in so many ways from mainstream legacy media? Tell me about that, in your opinion. You're a space journalist. How do you feel about that?
Not just legacy mainstream media. Yeah. I mean, even some of the respectable outlets like space.com, they have to have a headline that grabs you or they're not going to get eyeballs, and that's what keeps them alive. Now, they're pretty careful about it, but a lot of the B-class media is not. There was recently a story a few months back about Buzz Aldrin, with a journalist, quote unquote, who I have virtually no respect for, saying, oh, I'm his personal friend and he's living in squalor and he's near death and all this stuff.
Oh, boy.
And it's not true. I know him. I know his family. They moved him up to Ventura. They're taking care of him. But you can imagine what the B and C class media did with that. They went bonkers. Buzz Aldrin living like a donkey in filth and all this stuff. It was horrible. Mm-hmm. So we did what we could to sort of dispel that, both online and in press.
Yeah,
but you're right.
You read a lot about
that.
It
leads.
Yeah. You read a lot about that, and particularly asteroidal stories. And not to shift gears from your space knowledge, I just want to bring up an astronomy subject that many people, we've reported it here on this radio station, because we believed at the time, and it came from credible sources, that a certain asteroid had a relatively high percentile, without looking that number up right now, of striking the Earth in 32 or so. And then the dynamics of that orbit were recalculated, saying that it has a chance, and again, not knowing the percentage, forgive me, of striking the moon in 2032. Now the latest information says, nope, that's not going to happen at all. That's good if we can analyze further by looking at new orbits. But again, not to sound alarmist and not to be overly repetitive, that type of information you keep reading on there, let's get the facts straight and let's report it when we know really what's going on. No problem, right?
Yeah. And the press grabs these things when they're first detected. And of course, they're always reported publicly because that's what NASA does. It says, well, here's what we think, but this is preliminary. Well, that rarely makes it into the story because that's not sexy. As you know, you're an astronomer, you know better than me. The longer you track these things, the more you refine their orbits. And that's why we keep getting these more specific results. And we're in a couple of years going to launch a satellite called NEO Surveyor, which is going to go out and look specifically with a sun shield, look specifically for the percentage of near-Earth objects that are orbiting near the sun, and we can't see them easily. And those are the ones that tend to surprise us, the ones that sling around the sun and come in out of that.
You say it so well, right?
And this will be able to spot those. So they think within a decade they'll have it down to just a few percent left that we haven't spotted. And we're talking about big ones like Chelyabinsk or larger. Small ones will still always come in, but if you got something the size of a baseball re-entering, it's not going to hurt anybody because it'll burn up.
Yes. Well, that's why, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be watching very closely the 2029 story of the asteroid Apophis, named after the Egyptian war god, which we do know, right, Rod, that will come intercession well within the area of the geosynchronous satellites, maybe a mile or so, about 1,000 some feet in diameter. But that we're going to be reporting on with accuracy because already I'm reading these reports about, doom and gloom like that of an atomic bomb hitting the Earth. And, oh, God, if that were to happen. So we'll keep you posted, ladies and gentlemen, on that. Your questions and comments as we continue with the Dr. Sky Experience, 1-800-848-9222. Let's talk about another thing here. This is kind of fascinating to me. Mars and the Perseverance rover. We really don't hear a whole heck of a lot about it. We can give everybody a short weather forecast there for what's going on Mars. If you think it's horribly cold, or out here in Phoenix, incredibly hot. You said what, Rod? You got 100 degrees out there in California today? Is that amazing?
Yeah. It was not pleasant. And we were in the 70s last week. So, climate, what are you going to do? So Perseverance is still alive and well. Big news there is recently made its first completely AI programmed drive on Mars. It's got a vision system that's capable of identifying rocks and hazards well enough, multiple cameras looking forward. And, when you've got comms times that can stretch anywhere from 6 minutes to 20 minutes one way for radio messages to go back and forth between these two planets, it's good for the thing to have autonomous capabilities so it doesn't have to just sit there and wait. And then, of course, when you go into solar conjunction, the comms are blacked out completely. So in the old days, the rovers are just parked and waited until we could start talking to them again. Now, at least for a certain period of time, they can go forward. Now, do recall that these things were launched, Perseverance was launched 6 years ago. Curiosity was launched in 2012. They have to use radiation-hardened processors, computer processors.
Amen,
so
right.
The processors they buy from these defense contractors are dated back to about 1998. So this is really amazing work JPL has done to reprogram these things to be able to handle modern AI on site. So it's still driving the Jezero crater and recently identified what they think are ancient beaches, which they feel that coastline pretty broadly expands the possibility of fossilized life. So, we're getting closer, but if we don't get those samples back, which at this point it looks like we won't, because that rover has been drilling and sealing in little tube samples and dropping them all over Mars. We were supposed to go pick them up with the Mars sample return. That's been canceled or at least furloughed for now. And as it is, they're just sitting there.
Well, Rod, here we go with the Martian weather forecast, this per NASA. As of March the 7th, this is the latest one that I have. People can look it up. A day on Mars is called a SOL, S-O-L. It's been there for 4,829 days as of March 29th. The high temperature, in case you're wondering, ladies and gentlemen, that you have it relatively cold. A high temperature in the day, 39 degrees Fahrenheit. But, Rod, it gets pretty nasty. The low temperature at night, minus 92 degrees Fahrenheit. Not a place that you'd be happy to go about and walk around in the middle of the night unless you were well protected. And don't forget, as we talk here, a Martian day is 39 minutes longer than an Earth day. And yet, can you imagine the time delay that we would have if we were there? Upwards of what? It could be 4 minutes when it's close, that is Mars, or even up to like 15 or 20 minutes. So there's a lot to think about in the space program with trips to Mars. Amazing stuff. So they're still running. And the closest that I've gotten, Rod, not to be funny, is my Perseverance rover Lego that I happen to have looking at it here on the side desk. A beautiful piece of technology, but guess what? I'm not technical enough to have built it. I paid a young person who's 12 years old, gave them a generous amount of money, because, Rod, I couldn't put that thing together if you even tried to pay me. And I wonder about
I hope you had them glue it for you so it doesn't come apart.
You know, I don't think the kid did. I think he wants to make more money when he has to take the pieces and put them back in. We'll find out exactly what's happening. 1-800-848-9222. We see your phone calls coming in here as we move through time and space. We'll be getting to you, ladies and gentlemen, like George in New Jersey, Carl in New Jersey. And how about across the nation, ladies and gentlemen, as they listen to this most powerful blowtorch, Talk Radio 77. And where are we broadcasting from? Literally, ladies and gentlemen, broadcasting from the center of the universe that we call New York City, a most powerful radio station with a 104-plus year legacy. How about that? Beaming, Rod, as we say, what? Around the nation, around the world. And I'm confident, yes, I can even prove it, out into the universe. When we come back, we got a lot of things to talk about. Let's kind of concentrate on a couple of other great stories with your okay. And then you have some information that you want to share with us. We got about 2 minutes. Talk about your podcast. And if you can do that in 2 minutes, that'll take us to the hard break.
So this is This Week in Space, which is co-hosted by myself and Tarek Malik, who's the editor-in-chief over at space.com, the biggest space information site on the web. And we just crossed 200 episodes, which compared to what you've done isn't much, but for podcast, that's pretty good.
You bet.
And it's available on all the major podcatchers and elsewhere.
Give us your website so people can go there as we continue to do the Dr. Sky Experience live.
My website's pilebooks.com, and the podcast can be found on YouTube and all the usual spots.
We'll be right back. Our special guest, Rod Pyle, and you, ladies and gentlemen, with your calls, questions, comments about the wonders of the universe. 1-800-848-9222 as we continue with what we call Theater of the Mind. And you know, Rod, in the Theater of the Mind, we're now going to go to intermission, and we might recommend that you go to the snack bar and continue to join us on the other side.
This is the Dr. Sky Experience. Always look to the sky. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Hello, I'm Seth Shostak, senior astronomer at the SETI Institute, and my job is to look for ET by trying to eavesdrop on signals the aliens may be sending our way. And Dr. Sky is sending signals your way on the Dr. Sky Show.
Rocket ships are exciting, but so are roses on a birthday. An incredible quote from Mr. Spock himself, Leonard Nimoy, a long time ago. 32 minutes after the hour, if you're just joining us, thank you for spending part of your night or morning with us on a show that we call Critical Thinking. No, we call it Theater of the Mind with Critical Thinking. Rod Pyle is an author, journalist, and television producer, and editor-in-chief of Ad Astra magazine. Let's go to the phone calls, and we wait right now with no other hesitation. Let's say good morning to George in New Jersey. You're on with Rod Pyle. How you doing?
Good morning, Dr. Sky.
Good morning.
I wanted to go on so many tangents after listening to with Stephanie Powers, your last two guests, and the rockets and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But I called because of your influence in the way I look at the universe, and was out earlier and pondering the sky, and I'm looking at the Big Dipper.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I thought of you. I came in, I turned radio on, and here you are. Mm-hmm. And I look for my moon. We're getting a little clouds. And I look at certain constellations, and via your advice and your wisdom, I ponder the sky and our lot in life and our place in this universe and how vast it is.
Amazing.
And your wisdom and knowledge spreads to those of us that listen and can appreciate what you know. And I just wanted to share that with you, that you have an influence on people's lives.
Well, George, you're more than kind, but let me say this back. When you're looking at the sky, let me add something of value. And believe me, the comment is beautiful and much appreciated. But ladies and gentlemen, when you go out into the nighttime sky, don't think, and George, I know you know this, because light pollution in areas like New Jersey, New York, many people give up and say, wow, I can't see anything. But that's not necessarily true. You've been describing looking for the Big Dipper, looking for the North Star. Binoculars are always a recommended source for, enhancing the view. That's what we recommend. But George, thank you. But let me get Rod in on this, Rod. I mean, the beauty of what George is talking about looking at the sky, I think that's infectious, and we appreciate his comment. What say you, Rod?
I couldn't agree more. I did tons of it as a young man. It's a little harder now because we have a lot more light pollution in Southern California. But my son and I just spent a week out east of Joshua Tree in one of the few remaining true dark sky areas in Southern California. And, growing up, he had no interest in space or any of this stuff. He just wanted to get a good job and make a lot of money. But I used to take him to meteor showers, and we'd just hang out. And, I made it kind of a celebration. We'd have some food, and we'd have stuff to do while we hung out there waiting for for it to pick up after midnight, as you know. And suddenly, this interest is just, at the age of 30, he's just caught it. And so he bought himself a Dwarf 3, which is one of those little CCD image stack or CMOS image stacking telescopes. And I tell you, man, we were out there was a half moon up, and he wanted to image the Orion Nebula. So I got out my 8-inch Celestron and showed him this little fuzzy splotch. He set up that little thing, and I tell you, after it stacked 1,000 images, it looked like something out of Mount Palomar. I was blown away.
You're interesting. I mean, it is interesting what you're talking about, Rod. And again, I want to thank George not only for his kind comments about the host here, but more important than that, the ability to learn and wonders of the universe that are out there, no matter where we live. Mm-hmm. But these telescope devices that you're talking about, I have one, and I'm not a super technoid, so I'm being honest with the audience. It takes a little getting used to, but what is the whole thing behind this? It's taking images. It's processing those images and even have little light pollution filters that even if you live, I can't believe I'm saying this, and it's true. A friend of mine showed me his. He lives in a brightly lit city. We're here in Phoenix. People know where they are, and they have bright lights. That little filter, you just let it on the tripod. It finds the sky if you set it up on your phone with the app, right? And you take multiple exposures. It's like if 50 years ago somebody would say that that's magic inside that thing, whatever it does. Absolutely. It shows you the universe like you're a world-class photographer, right? That's amazing.
And you can set it out on a cold night and control it from your living room if you wish.
And, we've had some interest in this, and I'll pursue this, from companies that want to help sponsor this particular radio show that are in the realms of telescopes, binoculars, and those type of devices. And we'll keep people, abreast if indeed that does happen, and we hope it can, to expand our knowledge of the heavens. Well, let's continue with the callers. Let's say he's been patient. Carl in New Jersey. Good morning, Carl. You're on with Rod Pyle. How you doing? Thanks for the patience.
Oh, good morning, Dr. Sky, and I'd like to thank you for having Rod Pyle as your guest on the program. Quite an interesting guest at that. And I'd like to ask Rod a question dealing with setting up a settlement on the moon or Mars. If you compare the two in terms of the practicality maybe and the convenience, well, it would seem to me that it would be better to have a settlement as a test on the moon first. It's only about 3 days away, approximately, versus sense. Mars, which is quite a distance away. And so if you forget your Band-Aid or your bag of potato chips, you have a long way to travel from Mars. And also the idea that would be convenient in the sense that as we set up the settlement, we could test the environment in that kind of alien situation on the moon versus Mars, to get an idea of how the astronauts would react to that kind of an environment. And also another question would be, what about infants that might be born in that kind of environment? How would that affect them? So,
Carl, always interesting to hear your questions and comments and your participation. Rod, those are phenomenal questions. I mean, this is something that goes deep. Go ahead, please.
So those are great questions, and as it turns out, we're running articles on both those questions in the next couple of issues of Ad Astra, because it's very compelling and very now. And NASA agrees with you that it's best to go to the moon first. I mean, Mars would be a far reach for us now in any circumstances, but you're right. I mean, I think one way to look at it is that space hates people. It hates human beings. We're squishy bags of water. We don't do well in a vacuum. We don't do well in temperature extremes. We don't do well under extreme radiation. We do not know yet if mammals can reproduce in space successfully. So there's a lot to figure out before we set up a big settlement on Mars, Elon Musk notwithstanding. So if we go to the moon, I mean, we're still going to have to bury these things under a couple of meters of regolith of dirt to keep the radiation out and use various kinds of shielding, perhaps go deeper if there's a solar storm happening. But that's the case on Moon or Mars. The difference, of course, is neither of them have an appreciable atmosphere, but the moon doesn't have soil that's trying to kill you, too. There's issues with it. You can get the same kind of infection in your lungs as you can from breathing asbestos if you breathe too much lunar dust. But Mars soil is laced with perchlorate, which is really bad for people. You can wash it out if you have, say, a farm inside your settlement. You can wash it with water, and they think that'll...
Does OxyClean work, though, Rod? Does OxyClean help?
That's a good question. We'll have to get that guy with the black hair to come tell us. But,
maybe they have a better formula. Go ahead. Yeah.
But you're right. There's a lot to learn, and at the moon, you're a few days away, and it's a lot cheaper to get mass up there to set up a real hospital where you're going to need it, because as long as you're using people, you're going to have these issues. So that's all very critical. So yes, you're absolutely right. Moon first, Mars second. And I think the Chinese see it the same way, because that's how they're building their program.
Carl in New Jersey, always a privilege and honor to hear from you. And thanks for your participation on the Dr.
Did I answer the second half of his question?
I don't know. Go ahead. We have a moment. I'm sorry. I didn't quite hear.
I'm trying to remember what the second half was.
I didn't. Then you know something, Carl, if you're still with us, if you can give us a summation. I didn't quite hear it either. Okay, he's gone. Okay. But anyway, we'll have to continue on. And Carl, always a pleasure to hear you here.
This
is interesting.
Question, Carl.
It is. I mean, it's amazing. And let the people know this, because I've talked to some of these astronauts. You have. You've been covering this for your entire life, basically. Lunar dust, it gets all over those white spacesuits, and it's kind of nitty-gritty and gets in everything. So it's another issue that they have to be able to control that, because in the ring that you have with your helmet, you could even have a buildup of that stuff in there. Who knows? Mm-hmm. I'm not the scientist on the project, but the simple thing is lunar dust, it's corrosive, right? Corrosive.
I mean, on Apollo, they tried very hard to brush the dust off in between EVAs, because at the height of the program, they were doing three moonwalks. And you don't want that dust in the glove rings or in the neck ring. But that's just a couple of moonwalks. So you're talking about being up there for years at a time. This becomes a real problem. They're trying to figure out a way to maybe control it with static electricity, discharge, and that kind of thing. But it is a big issue. And the problem with both the moon and Mars is it never rains in either of these places. So on Earth, you have worn down dust. On these places, you have sharp dust, especially the moon. It's like glass, like microscopic glass shards, because it's very high in silica. So it cuts and abrades and does terrible things. And on Mars, in a different way, same problem, which is why for both the new lunar rovers and every Martian rover that's gone up, you have to have everything sealed up really tight so that you don't just wear out those bearings in the first 6 months.
That's amazing. We're approaching the next break here, ladies and gentlemen, the last break of our 2-hour show. Sad to say, but always continue to talk about the wonders of the heavens here. Our subjects are normally astronomy, space, aviation, weather, celebrity guests, as you just heard about an hour ago, with the amazing Stephanie Powers, and many more to come, and stories of American exceptionalism. Rod, give out your website again so people, in the limited time we have, so people can follow up right after the show.
It's pylebooks.com, PYLE-books.com.
And is that how they can get to your podcast, too, or is there a separate way to get there?
The podcast is listed there, but the easiest thing is just to look up This Week in Space on YouTube or one of the podcatchers, and it'll pop up right there.
That's amazing. Limited time. When we come back, ladies and gentlemen, Benny in Bayside's been patient, if he's still with us, and you, as we move to the top of hour 2. Isn't it amazing, Rod, how fast we move through time and space? Here at 1-800-848-9222. We love the questions in the form of dialogue and critical thinking. That's something that I give talks about, and I'm not the expert on it, but as we talk about these subjects to students, We combine the critical thinking story with stories of American exceptionalism and the great history and legacy of our American space program and so much more. When we come back, I want to throw this out to the audience here. It may not be the specialty that you want to talk about, but I'd love your comment. A UFO general out of Albuquerque, his name is General William Neil McCasland, has been missing since February 28th. And this is an interesting story, ladies and gentlemen. Nobody really knows where he is, at least as of now. The Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office is, doing a massive search for this individual, just like similar to the event that's happened in Tucson, Arizona. And a very sad story because this gentleman seemed to have a lot of knowledge about so many of the military projects and also the conversation about UFOs and worlds beyond. So that's something we'll just get into with a quick conversation, a news note here on the Dr. Sky Experience. And we will be right back. Your calls and questions, 1-800-848-9222.
This is the Dr. Sky Experience. Always look to the sky. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
This is Captain Jim Lovell, an old astronaut that's made 4 very significant flights. Hopefully that the people listen in, especially the young people, will get a good education, kind of follow me in space. And it was a pleasure to be on the Dr. Sky show, and lots of luck to all of you.
A still more glorious dawn awaits. Not a sunrise, but a galaxy rise. A morning filled with 400 billion suns. The rising of the Milky Way. A quote from the legendary Carl Sagan. Text from his book and a quote from Cosmos. 47 minutes after the hour, we continue with you, ladies and gentlemen. Your patience we appreciate as we say good morning to Benny in Bayside. You're on with Rod Pyle. Thanks for your patience.
Good morning. We go camping every summer. I'm 51 years old.
Yes.
Back in the day, me and my family, we go camping every summer. We would go camping at Alger Island on 4th Lake. It's an island, and my favorite thing, me and my brother were talking the other day, my favorite thing was taking the boat out and just drifting out into the lake and just looking up, and we would just watch the shooting stars and we would see the space station go by.
It's beautiful.
And that was our favorite thing in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to do that again.
You bet. Yeah, that's amazing stuff.
And my uncle also worked for Grumman. He was one of the engineers that made the lunar lander. Not made the lunar lander, whatever. He was one of the major engineers that did that. And my claim to fame is I had the BB gun still that he would chase the seagulls away whenever they had to do a test.
Is that autographed, my friend? I might want to buy it. No, there you go.
It's worth $40. No, not even. And his basement, literally, he had this it looked like a 2x4, and it was like a magnesium. He knew everything. It was magnesium 3240. Okay, Uncle Stanley. And I would hold it's light as can be. And my father I would hold one end. My father would twist the other end, and he would literally twist me. This beam did not budge, and it weighed ounces. And that's what he had from probably one of the main things from the lunar lander. One of the
That's amazing.
Shots.
Yeah, maybe. Benny, your stories are great about the peace and tranquility of looking out there. That's a beautiful thing. I envy you for that because what could be better than just relaxing and drifting like you're weightless through the cosmos? Rod, that's an amazing story, but maybe the item that Benny's talking about was made of unobtainium. Is that possible?
Well, the cruel truth about the lunar lander program for Apollo was Grumman got that contract in 1962, not really knowing what they're getting into because nobody knew how to build a true spaceship. This thing wasn't designed to fly in an atmosphere, just to the moon. And it was in this terrible position of being on top of the rocket, but below the very heavy command and service module. So the weight restrictions are punishing. Those guys under Tom Kelly, who ran the program, chief engineer, were miracle workers. I mean, they'd get change orders every couple of hours for stuff, but at the same time, they're milling parts down, they're machining everything just to the point that it breaks under testing and then backing off by 10%. They're doing chemical etching to try and make this lighter. They're going in and filing down the soldering where the wires reach the gauges and switches to reduce weight. they finally ended up offering a bounty to anybody from an engineer to the janitor. If they could come up with an idea that would save grams, he paid out something like $1 million, $2 million of bounties over the years.
Incredible. Yeah.
Just to get this thing light enough. Yeah, it was really an amazing program. And there's a great.
Well, Benny, thanks for being part of the show. Always appreciate the comments from the beauty of the heavens to people that you've been involved with, like many of us who have uncles, aunts, relatives that worked in the space program. And let's not discount the women, because, of course, the special month of March, we celebrate those achievements of the women. But again, many in the space program. Time doesn't permit to go through every example. But, Rod, in the limited time we only have about 5 or 6 minutes to the top of the hour. I wanted to get your take on something. Many people may have read, or maybe they haven't, a company called Reflect Orbital. And you and I talked off air about this. Tell us what it is, because so many people wonder how these young scientists are going to take light from the sun, beam it down to the Earth, yes, in day and night. And part of their methodology on their mission statement is they're looking not to interfere with the sanctity of the night sky, as Benny was talking about. What can you tell us about Reflect Orbital? Do you have any information?
Yeah, so this is a company started in 2021, kind of an upstart startup. They got about $21 million in money that I can track. Might be a little more now. They want to put these big reflectors up in orbit, and this isn't a new idea. I mean, the Germans were messing around with this back in the 30s. They wanted to make it into a weapon. They're going to put a huge reflector up in orbit, concentrate solar energy down, and burn New York down to the ground. They had all kinds of evil ideas. Never did it, of course.
Not good. Yeah.
This is an idea that would be smaller units. Their plan is to try and launch 4,000 of them, although they don't have anywhere near enough money to do that. They would range from about 120 square yards to a maximum of about 3,500 square yards. And, besides wrecking optical astronomy, because you've got stars the equivalent of, 5 times Sirius drifting through the sky, going in these polar orbits north to south.
Right.
But it would also probably disrupt the diurnal cycles of birds and certain animals. So, there may be a naturalist issue there in terms of the kind of things they do. So the idea is they give you enough daylight and you could, reposition them by order, so that if you have a construction site or a war zone, or you're doing a search for this Major General William McCaslin, say, and you need light, you don't want to be carrying flashlights, you could reposition one of these things or a collection of them to send enough light down to be very helpful. And of course, one of their primary arguments is, look, we need solar power, we need cheap, clean power. With this, you could have solar power 24/7 if you just keep a string of these things. Now, they're orbiting in low Earth orbit, so you've got to have one hand off to the next, to the next, to the next. And it would probably take a few thousand of them just to get up to about 20% of daylight. But, it would be a start. But yeah, the astronomers are not happy, and I can.
Well, on their mission statement, Rod, they do say, and I respect them. Again, I'm not judging them. I think this is interesting technology, that they do recognize the sanctity of the night sky with the world of astronomy, so that we can continue to do the great research. Because you probably know this. Maybe the audience has not had the experience. If you look in a small telescope at, let's say, a star field, what do I see? 20 years ago, I'd see the star and the galaxy or what I'm looking at. Now I see what? Constant bombardment by all these little things moving through the field. Like I thought they were like insects flying around, like, little fireflies. No, they're satellites getting in the way of a good view of the sky. So where does it end? Where does it begin? And we obviously don't want to have the Kessler phenomenon or the syndrome where one hits one and you have nothing but highways of, space junk up there. But that's another story. In closing, give us something that you want to give us that we haven't had time so far to talk about I'm sure you can do it, in about 4.5 minutes.
Well, I think you bring up a good point. I mean, you have to be able to reposition any satellite up there on short order because you need to avoid collisions. Musk is now talking about putting up 1 million with an M units of orbital data processors for AI. That would be about 350 feet across. Now imagine trying to miss those with all these little Starlinks, some still working, some not. Blue Origin sending up their satellites. I mean, as you say, you go out on any given night and you can spot these things right and left if you're looking for them. So the optical astronomers are going nuts, and the organization I work for, National Space Society, just recently put out a paper on dark and quiet skies. And one of the things they're trying to gently encourage the astronomical community, and it's not easy, is to say, the future is really probably in spaceborne telescopes. However, you know better than I, because this is your field, with modern telescopes, with the kind of AI that you can apply to them, you can filter a lot of this stuff out. So it's not good, but I'm not sure it's a tragedy that a lot of people are positioning it to be.
No, you're right about that. I mean, it's amazing from the low ground to the high ground. It's incredible. We see space in low Earth orbit, not to be overly exaggerative here as we close the show. There are so many satellites in there, and this is not just the Musk Starlink satellites. We're talking about other constellations of satellites. And the coolest thing that I read probably in the last month, and had to read it twice thinking it was not necessarily true, is the Japanese are looking to come up with a solution to the the metallic stuff that comes down, aluminum oxide, how to prevent it. Wooden satellites. How about that?
That's
Imagine
right.
wooden satellites.
That's brilliant. And with as many as are going to be coming, reentering over the next decade, there is a significant concern about all that metallic refuse in the upper atmosphere.
Interesting, Rod. I know this wasn't your homework assignment. We never give guests homework, but any idea if they were talking about, and again, we have no vested interest in this, so we're not telling people to buy it or not. Are there any space stocks out there that people should take a look at from companies that are already open to the public to purchase stock? I mean, I'm just curious what companies that you might think of that are doing that.
What seems to be rating highest at this point is SpaceX, of course, which is going to go public this year, and that's one to watch because they do dominate the global launch market. Surprisingly, Boeing, they had problems with Starliner, but they're still the prime contractor for the Space Launch System and satellites and defense. Rocket Lab, which is kind of an upstart, they've only been around about 10 or 15 years, but they've got a small launcher called the Neutron that's flown 75 times successfully. They've got a bigger one coming online. They're sending 2 of their own private spacecraft on their money to Venus to enter the atmosphere and look for life. And they do radio and all kinds of other stuff. And Intuitive Machines, which is a lunar lander company, which has got NASA contracts to build landers for the moon. They've had a couple of failures, but they bought a number of other companies with expertise, and they look like they're going to be doing great things. And they're also part of the Golden Dome project, if that goes. So they look like they could be a sound investment as well. But what do I know about money? My retirement fund doesn't reflect any knowledge, so we'll just leave it at that.
I appreciate it. And again, we're not recommending any of these stocks because we have a vested interest in them. We're just giving some generalities for people out there. We know that space, obviously, is not necessarily, as we've heard many times from Star Trek, the final frontier. It's obviously beyond that, too. And what's beyond that, that's for other iterations of the Dr. Sky experience. Rod Pyle, always a pleasure to have you. You're an author, a journalist, a television producer, and editor-in-chief of Ad Astra magazine. Let's do it again soon. And wishing you and your family clear skies and great health. And thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much.
Always a privilege and honor. Tomorrow night, ladies and gentlemen, in less than 24 hours, we continue with a very special guest, too. All guests are special, but by popular demand, Patrick Wood, who discusses the necessity of a conversation about AI, transhumanism, and what's happening in our world. Is it over for surveillance, or is it just beginning? No, you know the answer, ladies and gentlemen, so stay tuned for him as we continue here on the Dr. Sky Experience. My email, always answer those. I do, drsky@wabcradio.com. And to get a more in-depth analysis of what you can see in the nighttime sky, go to the Dr. Sky Experience at wabcradio.com and click on the convenient March 2026 Sky Report. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, as we continue here with Walter Sterling, Another Side of Midnight, and again, a big shout-out to our helmsmen, Tony and Bill, who navigate the airwaves, making sure this show sounds as good as you would expect on the big powerhouse blowtorch, Talk Radio 77, WABC, broadcasting from the center of the universe, and that is New York City. Clear skies, great health, and we'll see you in less than 24 hours.